Okay, so this week is the 1-year anniversary of our channel.
Cheers.
So we thought we'd do something a little different. We thought we'd address some of the financials of this, and mainly because the number one thing that all of our friends, family, just random people we talk to, they all say, man, I wish I could do that. Oh, I wish I had the money for that, or a million variations of why they wish they could do what we're doing, but don't think that they can.
So we thought we'd tell you exactly what goes into making this happen. So a lot of you who have been around for a while know we moved here from Garland outside of Dallas, Texas. I grew up there. Brian got stuck there because of me. We met when he was in the Army and stationed at Fort Hood, and he was up partying in Dallas for a weekend, and I was out. We met at a bar.
Yeah.
And he swore he'd never come back to Texas, but circumstances being what they are, he did, and spent, how long were we there? 15
years.
You were there 15 years. We weren't together the whole time.
We were together in Texas for 15 years.
We haven't been together 15 years. Have we? Yes, we have. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Wow,
Yeah.
You're old. And the plan was always to end up here where his family all lives. I didn't have any family left in Dallas, and it just made sense to be here. We just always figured it was going to be sort of a long-term situation. But life in Dallas was getting a lot harder than it had ever been. We owned our own business.
Yep.
And we did pretty well with it. We weren't rich, but we probably cleared $120,000 a year. We had a nice house, 3,000 square foot house that had a pool, and it was on a half an acre, which is unheard of there.
Yep. Backed up to a bunch of land, so we didn't see other houses.
Yeah, it was really nice for living in a city. It was perfect, but our mortgage payment had gotten to where it was 1.5 times more than it had been originally because of taxes and insurance. Property values in Dallas are skyrocketing just because so many people are flooding in. And population increasing also means that the roads were even worse. It's not like they were ever great.
No.
Anyway, and you drove all day.
I spent every day from when I got up in the morning till I got home doing nothing but driving around the Metroplex.
So he was angry.
Yes, all the time.
And things were just building and building and building. While the property values increasing made our mortgage payment ridiculous, it did also mean that we could sell our house for quite a bit more than what we paid for it. We could sell our business that we had built from nothing.
Yeah.
And make a little bit of money on that. So we bought our house for $281,000, I think it was.
That sounds right.
And we sold it for $550,000. That was pretty nice. Got some money in the bank. We paid off. We had some pretty legit credit card debt. Just, trying to pay for a lifestyle of keeping up with the Joneses and all the things that we thought we needed. Plus the house was built in the 80s and it needed stuff all of the time.
And we ran a business, so we had a bunch of, equipment. And
so we paid all that off and bought the Durango.
Yep.
And we bought you a truck.
We bought me a Brodozer. It was a stupid purchase. I was hard up to buy a truck and talked myself into buying one that was completely useless to me. It was 6 inches of lift and 35-inch tires and a short bed, and pretty much the antithesis of any truck that I've ever owned or ever cared to own. That truck only lasted in my possession for about 3 months.
Yeah.
And then I sold it.
Yeah.
After having sold the house, we hadn't sold the business yet, but we immediately we paid $20 for your Durango, $16 for that truck, though we recouped that same amount when I've sold it, so it's kind of a wash, but
that's true. And then we finished out the school year, and Bean and I moved up here in June, and we were in the process of selling the business. It was just a very long, drawn out.
It took almost a year.
It was that was so hard.
And we weren't a multi-million-dollar 50 truck.
No, we won't go into specific dollar amounts for what we got for the business, because we know the new owners, and I don't know how much of their business they want aired out there. So for their privacy, we'll leave that part out. But we did all right.
And then Charlotte moved up here with Bean
in June.
In June, once we purchased my grandfather's house.
Actually, we'd already bought your grandfather's house. That was part of what we did when we sold the house. We sold our house in Garland for $550,000, and we bought this 2 acres here for $32,000.
Yeah.
So that was nice.
Yeah, and it wasn't like my family cut me a great deal. That's what the property was worth because of the condition of the house and the condition of the property. And
it's a lot cheaper to live in a rural area. Rural. Than it is to live in the suburbs of Dallas. What a concept. Selling for more than $500,000 and then buying here for $32,000. We paid all our debt. We didn't have car payments. Oh, it was the best. I will live in a trash heap for that. That feeling is well worth it.
In Dallas, for us to go out to eat, just the three of us, for lunch would be $120 pretty consistently.
But we had a couple cocktails.
Well, sure. But we go out to eat here and have cocktails, and we spend like $50.
Yeah.
Our electric bill in Dallas had gotten to a point where we were spending $2,500 a month on electricity.
Electric and water.
And water was negligible part of it.
Yeah, it was pretty minimal. Yeah.
Whereas we came here and our highest electric bill has been $280.
Yeah.
And that's running 3 window units throughout the summer nonstop.
Yeah. And we don't pay for our water because we have a well.
Yeah.
So.
We don't pay for sewage because we're on septic.
That's right.
So you can see the difference in what we left to what we came to, and how even though some of the out-of-pocket money to buy things can be up front and it can be a lot, but it's a wash because you spend so much less in the day-to-day here.
Bean and I moved after her 3rd grade year was over, and we moved up here in with Gammy and Pappy. And thank God for them for letting us do it. We were there a lot longer than we thought we were going to have to be. I feel bad. I still feel bad because they let our dogs stay in the house, and they're not dog people. You know, they like a clean house, and there's a reason they don't have indoor dogs. But they let us have our indoor dogs. But of course, I'm constantly worried about the dogs and the kid, and you know, it's hard to live in someone else's house because you feel like you're putting them out all the time. But they were great about it, and I appreciate the hell out of it and could never thank them enough for it. And the reason that we were there longer than we thought we were going to be is because we had hired a guy to do the bathroom. That was the only thing we really needed in order to be able to live in the house.
Yes. Was
a functioning bathroom. Everything else was good enough to live in.
And I wasn't up here yet to do the work myself. So we had to try to find somebody, and it took a while. We had to contact multiple contractors. Some wouldn't return our calls. Some said, sure, we can do it in 6 months.
Yeah. And
then we found a guy who said he would do it in about 2 weeks' time and gave us a decent quote. And he did if you've watched our bathroom video, the quality of the work is good. It turned out very nice. Mm-hmm. It ended up being more than we were originally quoted. But the biggest issue really was, instead of 2 weeks, it took more like 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
For him to finish.
Well, originally he was going to have it done before Bean and I even moved up.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until, we finalized the sale of the business in September, and you moved up, and you still had to stay with your parents for a couple weeks too.
Yeah.
I mean, it was after you moved up that it even got done. So it was probably 4 months.
Now keep in mind, the bathroom is probably 5 feet wide by 8 to 10 feet long.
Yes, and your dad did the demo. Your dad pulled everything out himself.
And we kept the existing walls, so he sanded the walls down and polyurethaned them. It's not like he put up drywall or...
Right.
Basically leveled the floor, ran the plumbing and the electrical to it.
Replaced the window.
Put in a tub, a toilet, a sink.
Yeah.
The sink was made out of a dresser that we already had in the house.
Yep.
So with all that, the total cost of the bathroom ended up coming out to $10,673.
And 51 cents.
Which was about double what we were originally quoted. Bring it in.
It seemed like a lot. Like it really, that one set me aback a little bit. Yeah, I was not expecting that. You'd sold your truck, but then you bought Big Red.
Yeah, I bought Big Red for 10.
Yeah, which was fine. And also, when we sold the business, because we had this money in the bank, neither of us were working. We were just focusing on working on the house. So while living here is cheap, it's not free, and we like to eat out. So the savings was, it was headed in a downward trend, that's for sure, but nothing we were too concerned about. And we did start the YouTube channel immediately. It was a decision we'd made before we even got moved in, because as most of you know, his brother Jason has a pretty successful YouTube channel, and he said you should record that. And plus our friends, like we're talking about today, that we're all, oh man, I really wish I could do that. Well, they kind of live vicariously through our journey. So I will say, starting a lawn care business in Dallas was hard. It was a lot of sleepless nights and constant, we were in bed every night sending emails and invoices, and it was hard. We had gotten to a pretty good rhythm by the time we sold it. I don't even think we realized how easy, how streamlined, I guess, it had become. So now we're on this new venture that, again, we know absolutely nothing about. And it's hard. It's hard. And it was a bit pricey to get started even in and of itself.
Yes.
We spent $8,750 just on technology to get this started. And it's not like we have really nice stuff. We got a couple of cameras. We had to get a nice laptop.
Starlink.
The Starlink internet. Yeah, because that is one thing out here. You're not going to find good internet, but thank God for Elon Musk.
We got GoPro. We have 2 cameras. The microphones, the spare battery set, different tripods. And like you were saying too, on top of not only did we not know anything about running a YouTube channel, but at least when it came to the lawn care business, we didn't know anything about the business side of it, but I knew how to do yards and I knew how to fix equipment. And moving here, I know how to frame a house or rebuild an engine, but I don't know a dang thing about cameras, technology. Excuse me, I don't know anything about any of that stuff. That's the Jason side of the gene. So we had to learn how to do all that. That's why the quality of our stuff has changed so much. We're trying to learn new camera angles and how to get better microphones and all kinds of stuff.
Even now I'm realizing your mic is very different than mine, so we probably don't sound good. It's little things like that nobody thinks about, So at least with lawn care, you did a lawn, you got paid for the lawn. YouTube is not like that at all. You have to work for free for a lawn.
See, that's a thing we had to learn. After Charlotte very angrily editing a video the first time we used multiple cameras and cussing me out the whole time about how hard it was to sync the audio. We learned there's a reason they have that stupid clacker thing in movies.
I thought you were going to say that's the thing we had to learn was to make sure we have fresh batteries for when it dies. How many times has it died in the middle of a project and we're like, oh!
So many.
And it just happened just now. So so now we're learning a whole new business. It's something else that we're not good at, that we're having to try and figure out how to be good at. And we're not making any money at it. But one day we will. And one day it will be easy, just like the lawn care business was.
Yeah, I would say that if we hadn't run the lawn care business, I'm a big believer in things happen the way they're supposed to. If we hadn't had the lawn care business, I probably would have given up on the YouTube channel by now.
Really?
Mainly because the additional work and back to being, never having any free time. But because we had the lawn care business, I know what's at the end
temporary.
of that. Yeah, I know at the end of that, I won't be going to work. I'll just be working on the property and filming. And that makes it a goal worth chasing. And if we hadn't already gone through that once, I probably would have been like, screw this. I'm just going to fix the house and stop recording myself all the time.
Well, if it wasn't for you, I would still be giving up on it. So There's one in every relationship, and Brian's definitely the motivator. He always sees the positive in everything, and he helps keep me grounded, keeps me from spiraling down my rabbit hole, reminding me that there's light at the end of the tunnel, there's a purpose in all this that we're doing, and then it's not always going to be this hard. And honestly, that it's not even as hard as I think it is some days.
Yeah, we get into our own heads about it sometimes, and it's good to just keep perspective on, I'm not stuck in traffic screaming at the 75 millionth person that's cut me off or almost rear-ended me or pulled a gun on me in traffic.
Yeah, that's a true story. That happened.
So, yeah, it's perspective.
Yeah.
When you drive home from work and you're driving through the mountains looking at the beautiful trees, you're like, this really isn't that bad.
That's not that bad. So then we got cheap after that, and you can go back there and see our videos and see what we did. But we cleaned. We cleaned out the basement. We put a temporary front porch on with all things that we already
stuff we found in the barn.
On the property. You set up a shop in the barn with your tools and stuff.
I had to make room so that I could actually work on things.
Mm-hmm. With the thresher removed.
Yep.
Ed came and got the thresher.
That was free through a friend.
Yep. Oh, and then we set up upstairs, organized it a little bit so we could sleep up there.
Yes.
And you keep in mind too, like we got rid of a lot of stuff when we moved because we were obviously downsizing here, but we still, I won't say that it's not that we don't have room for it necessarily right now. It's just that we know that the whole inside of the house is going to be redone, and eventually we're going to end up over here in this house. So a lot of our stuff just is not unpacked. It's still in boxes and bags and stuff, and then you have to try and store all that somewhere. So that's a lot of what we were doing up there, is just trying to organize the boxes and make ourselves some space. So.
And once we got through that, the next step that was really important was getting the wiring updated. Because more than half of the house was either 1950s wiring, probably a third of the house was knob and tube wiring. The fuse panel was, I would guess and say it was put in the 40s or 50s. So I had to immediately start getting all the wiring in the house redone so we didn't have to worry about burning it down one day.
That was one thing that we also, your uncle replaced the fuse box for us.
Yes, my uncle worked, he does that kind of work. So he had new service run from the pole, and he put in the new breaker box for us before we moved in.
Yeah, which was awesome.
So then all I had to do was run all the wiring from the box to the various places.
All you had to do.
Well, yeah.
You could go back and look at those videos too. There was a lot. I think we had 3 wiring videos because it definitely turned out to be more of a challenge than we were expecting. I mean, we're not talking about like drywall and you got to go inside the 2x4s or anything. Like this is all, it's just wood planks for walls in our house. So we thought it should be fairly easy because it's just going to be on the surface, but it was not.
Yeah.
It was not easy to find everything. We still haven't got the living room.
No,
to this day.
Purposely waited on the living room until we can get it because it's lath and plaster, so it's going to be a lot of work. But everything else, I mean, the living room's done. It's just the light in the living room that's not done. The walls are all wired.
Well,
all the outlets.
Yeah, I'm thinking of that wire that comes out at the bottom of the stairs that we don't know where it goes still.
Yeah, that one I'm not sure yet.
Yeah.
It's not hooked to power, so it's not going to hurt anything, but
it's just curious because you spent all that time tracing everything and couldn't figure that one out. Well, I'm sure we will when we get the plaster out.
Yeah. So I started the wiring, and because I was able to do it myself, it was basically the cost was breakers and long runs of wire. So I ended up spending $802 on wiring supplies for junction boxes, outlets, wire, breakers.
Outlets, light fixtures.
Yeah, light fixtures, which some of those aren't even hooked up yet. They're still in the boxes upstairs. I'm sure you don't even remember that. So that was the next big job to tackle that took a little bit of money. Wasn't crazy expensive.
No, not at all. But it got the house just that much more livable.
Yeah.
And it was huge because we needed to work on the kitchen. The stove in the kitchen did not end up working. Pap hadn't cooked here, and I think your mom said she thought that probably your Uncle Lance was the last person to cook in there, like after your grandma died.
That makes sense, yeah.
Pat probably didn't even cook much after that. But regardless, we weren't sure if the stove worked at first. It was covered in stuff, but once we got everything cleaned off and tried it, it didn't work, which was kind of disappointing because it was like a cool old 50s style. I really wanted it to work, but it didn't. And the dishwasher didn't work. We went on a marketplace and we found somebody selling appliances it was coming out of an apartment that was being renovated. So it all worked. They were just updating it.
They were switching from white to stainless because...
Right. And we wanted white.
Yeah.
Because our fridge is white, so we needed white to match with it anyway. So we went out and bought this cooktop, a microwave, and a dishwasher.
Yes.
And it was $1,057 for all three. So that was a heck of a deal. I think we did really good. They're not super high end or anything, but they work just fine. It wouldn't really make sense to have super high end appliances in our kitchen anyway.
Well, and you probably don't even remember this now, but I fried that first dishwasher.
Oh, and then we went back.
Then we went and bought one from the store. Because in all of my 700 wiring, I screwed up one breaker, and it was the dishwasher.
After that, we did the gravel driveway.
Yep. Which was, we did it the cheapest, half-assed way we could do it.
I wish that we had splurged and just put a tarp down. Because the weeds in there are killer.
Which we'll probably redo, but I think even in the video we talked about, like, this is not the finished thing. This is just, that first winter here, it was nothing but a mud pit.
Yeah.
And so we just needed something to get thrown down so that we could park and not be buried in mud all the time.
Yeah. It was a lot of work for a temporary driveway.
Everything's a lot of work.
Yeah.
That was, how many tons of gravel did we bring?
Oh, well, we only spent $290 on gravel.
Yeah, it's not bad.
We could have spent another $100 on tarps. We should have done that. Just put a tarp down. Okay, just do it. Anyway, so what was after the gravel driveway? Oh, the basement steps. That was...
Yep.
That was just lumber.
I put my foot through the basement steps.
Yep.
And all I had to do was buy wood to build 2 stringers and then the stairs themselves. I would guess and say it was $200, $300.
Yeah.
It was not much.
Yeah, I didn't even put it on here, so it wasn't much. Oh, after that we started building garden beds.
Yes, at that point we were not in spring yet, but it was coming and we knew we wanted to be prepared because part of trying to start homesteading and all that is building gardens. And Charlotte's never really gardened prior to this.
No.
So we weren't going full out the first year, but we wanted something for you to get a feel for what gardening's like here.
Yep.
You were pretty adamant that you would suck at it.
Yeah.
And I kept trying to reassure you that gardening in Pennsylvania is very easy compared to gardening in Texas.
That's no lie. It really is.
And you crushed it. I mean...
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I got a lot of plans for next year. Was it you that found those metal panels online, or was it your dad?
My dad found those.
Because he bought some too. So they drove out, got those marketplace metal panels, cut them and shaped them and painted them. And then you built me the 2 wooden ones out of stuff that we already had here in the barn.
Yes.
Later, we ended up using the cast iron tub that we'd wanted to put in the bathroom.
Yes.
We ended up using that as an herb garden, so that worked out nicely. So between building the beds, the soil to put in the beds,
metal panels,
seeds, composters. We spent $942 on the garden this year, which sounds like a lot because we definitely didn't have $942 in vegetables returned. But the amount that we will need to spend every year is minimal. It was probably, I might have spent $100 on seeds.
Yeah.
So very cheap. The rest of it is infrastructure that we'll be able to use for years, although we do already have a lot of plans on how to make it different next year.
Yes, but even the building and expansion is going to be cheap, if not free, because we're going to put more in the ground.
Right. We're going to keep the metal beds for sure. I liked, like, potatoes and onions were good in there because they really need soil that drains well. And I'm about to put some garlic in there too because it grows over the winter.
So after the gardens...
Oh, you did the water catchment system.
Yes, because we knew that, well, I knew that living on a well means that you run out of water. So we built the water catchment system and put gutters on the house.
Yeah.
Which we ultimately didn't even use a lot of the water. They're still all full except for one.
I emptied the one a couple of times. I mean,
Yeah.
it ended up refilling with rain, but I never even moved the system over to any of the other two. I only ever used that one. Now, I definitely could have watered more, but my garden did better than a lot of people's who were relying on rain to water their garden. It was a really dry summer, so I did better. And I could have, next year, we're going to upgrade it and actually attach an irrigation system to them that we can either go just turn on and
Yes.
or we can set it up on a timer.
I bought most of the stuff required for that. I bought most of the stuff required, but it's going to be hundreds of dollars to get the rest of the hose that's required. And I need one or two more fittings so that it'll just be one set location. You flip a couple levers and it'll fill out of each individual tank. And on that, we spent, between the totes, the gutters, the pump, all that stuff, we spent $1,247.80.
And I think probably the majority of that was the pump.
Yeah, the pump was very expensive. I bought a very high-end, very heavy-duty pump. That way we can not only use it for watering the garden, but if we want to wash the cars, if we want to use high-pressure water at any point, that thing is rated to pump tons and tons and tons of water.
Oh, so then came replacing the sill.
Yeah, so on these old homes, the house, because they're just hand-hewn beams and logs, and they stacked a foundation, and then on top of the foundation sat a sill board. And in this house, I forget the exact dimensions, but it was like 16 inches by like 12 inches or something.
it was
They're
real thick.
massive. And it runs the entire length of the house, and then width, and then length, and then width.
The original ones are one big, like it was a giant tree. It was one big
Yes.
board that was that size.
So you can find that. It's just very expensive. And it's hard, obviously, when you're building the house, it's easy to use that kind of lumber, but when you're raising the house and only replacing one of them, it's very difficult to get it back into that same spot. So they had a plan to do box beams under it, but ultimately what they found when they started cutting into it was the entire thing wasn't rotted like we thought. Basically, it was the front 2 inches, which on a modern build would be devastating, but because the thing's 16 inches thick,
Right.
it ended up not being a big deal, so they cut that rot out and attached a board to it to give us a better spot so that when we do get the chance to build that front porch, we have something to attach the ledger to.
Yeah.
So we actually found some local Amish guys, Amish or Mennonite, I didn't ask, but they were one or the other. And they came and did the work for us. We figured hiring them because they know old construction better than most of the, guys my age around here. And they came and did the sill for $1,301.
That includes, there were some bolts you had to go buy.
Yeah, some big lag screws and
Yeah. So it was good. I think originally we were quoted like $1,600 and it ended up being less, which was nice. Pleasant surprise.
And that was the first time somebody insinuated that we were poor. And I was like, I forget what the house looks like. And I know that we made money and I know who we are. So I don't think of us as being poor. But that Amish gentleman said, I don't even want to tell you the quote because it's going to be a lot. And I said, well, just tell me, because I'm thinking, man, is he talking 10 grand, 20 grand? What are we looking at? And he said, it's going to be $1,600. And I was like, okay, bud, knock yourself out, get her done. It's like, I'm not that poor. Holy crap.
Look around you, babe. Like, he was just so shocked. I think he thinks we're poor. It was so funny. Oh my gosh. Anyway, we're off topic again. Oh, so then came the back porch. And wow, that one added up fast.
The back porch that one makes me sad.
What do you mean?
Well, it's the first time I've built a floating porch like that, and not floating, but built a porch like that. And I made enough minor errors that drive me nuts, that cost me time and money.
I gotcha.
So it took a lot longer than I thought. It cost more money than it should have because I made poor cuts and stuff like that. It's all stuff that it just happens, but when it happens to me on my own property, it irritates me. But it was a necessity because that door, if you go back and look at our videos, that back door just opened and fell.
Yeah.
I had nailed 2 boards up so that you could at least walk down a ramp, but it wasn't exactly great. And considering the front porch is temporary, it was a necessity. So that, yeah, like Charlotte said, that added up pretty quickly. So the back porch ended up costing $7,638.39. And going forward, it will be cheaper. It was part of the frustration at the time, and we couldn't even disclose it. But when we bought this property, with it came a concrete mixer, which we had to rent, a post hole digger, which we had to rent, the tractor that I could have used to move equipment and haul crap out, move trash. So, like, we won't have to rent and pay for those things going forward. But at the time, I didn't want to ask the owner if we could use the equipment when we hadn't closed on the sale yet.
Okay, well, we're there.
Okay.
We bought the property next door.
So at this point, we had spent some money, but we still had a lot of money in the bank. And it was purposely set aside to put a big
Down payment
on this property so that we didn't have a giant mortgage.
Because I don't know if you've paid attention to what interest rates are right now, but holy smokes.
They're not great. So when we had first bought Paps, I had approached the gentleman that owned this. I'd never met him because this house had been vacant my whole life. But he, for whatever reason, liked us and agreed to sell because apparently people had been approaching him to sell for a decade or two.
And he wouldn't do it.
And he wouldn't do it. And when I called him and told him our plans, he said, okay. Actually, what he said is, my wife's been on me to get rid of this property. Now's the time.
It's funny how things work out like that, just like us moving here. And sometimes, you know.
It is.
There's a divine hand.
But we did work out a deal. He gave us a little bit of a deal because I said, any of the trash that you don't get rid of, just leave it. I'll take care of it. You guys don't have to clear it out. I said, I'm
just
not.
Stuff in general.
Yeah.
They had an auction, and we told them, you know, if whatever doesn't go, if you don't want to deal with it, just leave it there. We'll take care of it.
Yep. So we ended up paying for the property. It's about 80 acres, the house and the barn. And we paid
$340,000 for that place.
$340,000 with the equipment, all the property. There's a piece of property up the road that came with it that's wooded. And then we also did reach out to a timbering company. And they gave us $30,000. So in about a year, they're going to come through and cut the really big trees out and leave the medium to small trees so that they can actually flourish. So we got some of that back pretty immediately.
Yeah, because they paid us already.
Yeah, even though they didn't do the work, they...
Which I guess is smart on their part too, because if the cost of timber goes up,
yeah,
they get to make more money on us. But I mean, it could go down. I don't know. Got an election coming up. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, that's true. So that depleted the money.
That was just almost everything we had left.
And we put what, $100,000 down on that?
$100,000 down on the house.
Yeah. But that was obviously the biggest expense. If we hadn't bought that property, we could have finished this property, had it beautiful, and still had money in the bank.
Absolutely. But instead we took on more debt. But it's long run, it's worth it. We have a purpose behind all of this, and it's not just a YouTube channel. You know, whether the YouTube channel makes us money or doesn't, we're not setting up a business, we're setting up a lifestyle.
Yes.
And it's here for us to be able to live on even if we're poor. That's the whole point.
Yep.
Is that we can live here no matter what. We're never going to be homeless. Yes, we have a mortgage on this property, but if worse comes to worse and we default on that, they can never take Paps from us. We're trying to create generational wealth. So we take on this mortgage payment, but then that means Bean doesn't have one.
Yes,
Her kids don't have one.
I should say, we're not at risk of losing this property, if that's how that came across. It's just
I'm just saying if worse comes to worse.
Yeah. If it ever got to some bad point.
Right.
We could even sell off pieces of the land, particularly because they're separated. But like Charlotte said, what separates us, I think, from a lot of the other homesteading channels or DIY channels is we are building this for us, but we're building this primarily for Bean. So that she'll have her own house in Paps while we're still around, and then when we're gone, she'll have all of this to raise her kids. And she won't have a mortgage payment. She won't have to build this up. She'll just have to maintain it.
Right.
Keep it going.
Right. We're trying really hard to instill in her the sense of how important that is, how rare that is anymore.
It's also for that extended family, for Bean's cousins, our nephew and niece and nephews and niece, to be able to come up here and spend time like you guys were able to do at your aunt and uncle's in Illinois. They live in a very similar, it's like this, but less hilly part of Illinois.
Yeah.
But that was always their escape, was to be able to go up there and have that space. And we want to be that space for all of our family to come. And
Absolutely.
then Bean will be that times 10, because she'll have all this established. And we have spent a lot of money, and we're spending a lot of money, and we're doing a lot of work. And it's exhausting. This lifestyle is not easy, but it is exceptionally rewarding. I don't get nearly as frustrated with this as I did with the stuff in Texas, the work. No. Like, this is a goal. This has a clear, defined goal of what we're trying to achieve. And it makes it completely worth it. So I'd say a year in, I unequivocally would do this again in a heartbeat. I regret nothing. I'm super pumped to keep doing this.
Yeah.
And with every job we get done, it's just that much clearer, you know?
Yeah.
There's never a point where I think, oh, should we have done this? We had such a nice house. I don't miss that house at all.
No.
I don't miss the traffic down there. I don't miss my fancy trucks. None of it. And I know that's something I think a lot of people think is weird, is me driving these old trucks and stuff. But I tell you, I love it. The maintenance part, you know, right now, just because of how busy I am, it gets a little frustrating from time to time. But I didn't spend $80,000 on it and then have to spend $10,000 on a computer, or they're great.
Yeah.
The whole thing about this has definitely been a win. Everybody asks how the Texan likes Pennsylvania.
They ask me all the time, how do you like it? Are you liking it? Do you miss Texas? No. I miss my friends. We have amazing friends down there that hopefully will all one day come up and join the compound. They know who they are and they know they're invited. I think they're just waiting for us to finish the hard part. And then they'll come up. So yeah, I miss my friends and I miss Mexican food. And that's really it. I like the chickens. I'm excited. That was our next project, was the chickens. We didn't really talk about that.
Yeah.
The chickens chickens themselves are cheap. You can go to Tractor Supply and buy a chicken for $3. And it's crazy to me. The food's pretty cheap, lasts a long time. Like, chickens themselves are pretty cheap. We remade an existing building into a coop. We bought the hardware cloth.
I don't even know if I bought lumber for that. I think I used lumber that we had. And the nesting boxes we owned prior, so.
Yep. Yeah, so the chickens were pretty cheap. We got chickens for about $729. What did we spend $729 on?
Well, the wire alone was like $2 or $3.
Oh, that's true. That wire's pretty expensive. We pulled down the summer house. That was free, except for the beer to feed everybody. We did pay later for the fill dirt to go in the hole. Yeah,
we paid for fill dirt, but even the equipment to get it out of here was my boss at work let me borrow the dump truck and the skid loader, and so that was free.
And then you worked on the four-wheeler and on the trucks. The four-wheeler we've actually spent, I was surprised when we added it up how much we've spent. It was $1,253 we spent on the four-wheeler, which is still a lot cheaper than a new four-wheeler.
Yeah, a new one's like $12,000, so.
Yeah. Oh, and then you worked on the trucks last weekend, but I don't even think I added that up. You didn't spend too much.
That was like $200.
On the trucks, getting those going. So, which a lot of these things, we're talking about the expenses of it, but this is just life. Like, you're spending this money too. You may be having to take your truck to a shop, but I mean, life just costs money, you know? So all told, just on projects, not counting what we paid for the houses, and these are only the big projects that I added up, not just the little maintenance, you know, whatever kind of deals. But all told, we've spent $35,681 on projects in the last year, on big projects. But we are going to have to spend more money on different stuff because this is an ongoing thing. We still have to do siding and windows. We still have to pull out the plaster in the living room.
Put a front porch on.
We still have to do the floors upstairs.
Mm-hmm. This stuff sounds really expensive, and it is. But when you factor it into your average person in the country is probably spending $200,000 or $300,000 on just a run-of-the-mill house. We spent $32,000.
Yeah, and then another $36,000. So, you know, we're still we're still doing pretty good. And that's not even like a lot of that you would spend anyway, even if you already had a nice house, because it was gardens and chickens and you know, things like that. So
by the time we hit 100,000, that house should be.
Honestly, I don't think we're doing too bad for what we've done so far. Yeah, by the time we hit 100,000, we'll be done, which means we'll have paid 132,000 for a house with a couple of acres and chickens and gardens and a nice new deck and a nice new front porch.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be almost like a brand new house.
I think even just 100, I was including the price of the house in that.
Oh, really?
I think if we put another 40 grand into that house, it'll be pretty well done. Who else, anybody in here that thinks that they have a house on 2 acres for $100,000? I'd be impressed to see where that is.
You think you can't afford it? You can afford it. So the hardest part is just being patient with the process and waiting till you can afford to do the things, or you've got time to do the things. One day at a time. Every day we make it through is one day closer to this all being done, pretty, and grandkids running around, and
yep,
it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good times.
After going through all that, I'd say we're definitely making progress.
Yeah, we are.
If you go into the description, we'll have links to some of the videos that we talked about, so that you can go back and see what the money that we just discussed, what it actually went into and what we accomplished with that money.
Making progress. Follow along with us every week, Sundays, noon Eastern time. Watch us through our successes and our failures and everything in between on YouTube, Rumble, and Patreon at Armstrong Acres Farm,
where we will continue to make progress.
That's right.
Making progress.
Oh, you're my favorite of all the animals. Yes, you are. You're lowest maintenance, the cutest, the purriest. Yes, you are, aren't you?